And just so everyone knows, we are now live on Access Humboldt and on YouTube.
Saturday Night Live. Sorry, that's old.
We could probably maybe Thursday Night Live. Okay, so with this meeting, we'll be introducing Frank Wilson. He is our vice chair, and he's going to be handling the meeting in the absence of our chair, Michael Sweeney, or prior chair, Michael Sweeney. So, Frank, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order of January 14th, 2021 of HWMMA. Tyler, would you please do a roll call?
Of course. Let's start with Pereira.
Here.
Castellano.
Here.
Hogan.
Here.
Bone.
Okay.
And Wilson.
Here. Okay, it looks like that we have a quorum and we are ready to move ahead. The first item that we have is, and I apologize, my eyesight is really failing me this week, is the consent calendar. Yeah, we do that before public comment, I believe.
That is
Hello.
correct.
Consent calendar, yes. Everything that is on the, could I get, Tyler, would you read that? Because like I say, my eyesight is really, I've got some glasses that aren't right.
Of course.
Eyesight. Would you read that, please?
Consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or a member of the public. Consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion.
Does anyone on the board wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, I do want to note that we were notified of a typo, which is on page 9 of the financial report. It inadvertently wrote fiscal year 2012 through 2021. I'll just say I think that we're all in a hurry to get the year 2020 off of any writings, but that change has been noted and you shouldn't be seeing it any further. So we will make sure that the record reflects the change that did come into our attention.
I'll still move it now that the world is right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anyone from the public that wishes to pull an item from our consent calendar? I don't know if you have someone that looks for hands raised.
I am seeing none.
Okay, I don't see any on mine.
In 8 years, we've never had anybody pull anything, so I don't know if tonight will be any different.
Would someone entertain a motion that we accept the consent calendar?
We have a motion from Director Bone.
Oh, I'll second.
I'll second.
And the second is by who? Elaine?
Sophia. Oh, Elaine. Either one.
Doesn't matter.
Whichever you want to put.
Elaine.
So would we take we have a motion with a second. We'll please take a roll call vote.
Pereira.
Aye.
Castellano.
Aye.
Hogan.
Yes.
Bone.
Yep.
Wilson.
Yeah. All right, that motion carries. The next item, I believe, is comments from the public, if I'm reading that right. Consent calendar.
That is correct. We will be accepting either oral or written comments on non-agenda items. And I do want to note that we have not received any submitted written comments. You might want to ask if there's anybody from the public who would like to address the board.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the board? I hear none. And if, whoever our moderator or the technical person doesn't hear them, then I will assume there are none.
Correct. There's no indication of any other comment from Zoom participants.
Okay, the next item is item
Item 5, and this is a presentation from Zero Waste Humboldt, and we do have Maggie Gaynor. She'll be providing the presentation to the board, and she
We're skipping
is
4.
available. Oh,
We're
4?
gonna skip
I
4.
just said,
Oh, shoot. Yeah, we need a chair, huh? My apologies, Frank.
we're going to receive and approve capital improvements plan administrators.
I
That
think
was last month.
that might be the November agenda.
Roll one more page and you'll have it.
That is the okay. That's the minutes. I'm sorry. I'm going to go 2 pages. And this is not the part with the truck shed, is it?
No, it's after. It should be on page
7.
39.
This should be on page 39.
Page 2.
Elect authority officers.
Okay, I guess I was. I'm seeing, I guess, the old minutes. So we're on page what? 30?
39.
39. Can I just make a motion, Jill?
Might want to wait for Frank to catch up. He's our chair.
Oh, I got it. I was my mistake. Page 39. This is to elect authority officers, which is to elect a chair and a vice chair for the year 21, 22, I guess.
This is just going to take the board through the fiscal year of June 30th, 2021. You'll recall that we had the conversation last year in June, and the board decided to go ahead and have Michael serve half the year. And so we're just looking to complete that fiscal year, and then it'll come back to the board in June so that they will go for that full year after that.
Okay, I recall we did something a little different because he was leaving. So
Correct. Yeah, that is correct.
okay, so this only takes us to the end of June 2021.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, I guess the next point is we place that back. Is there anyone wishing to make a nomination for?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Frank Wilson as chair and Leslie Castellano as vice chair.
Do we have a
I
second?
second. Yeah, I second that.
Who said? I didn't catch you seconded that.
Oh, Elaine.
Okay.
Elaine. From Blue Lake,
Thank you.
second it.
All right, we have a motion with a second.
Need to ask if there's any more nominations.
Are there any more nominations for either of these positions? Hearing none. Are both of the people nominated willing to accept these positions? I am for the. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the nomination. I would be proud to accept the position.
And I would be honored as well.
Hey, Frank, and you'll be happy to know that this comes with a vision package, so you'll be able to get a set of glasses.
Oh, that would be great. And maybe I can actually meet my ophthalmologist and not have to be in a parking lot. So I guess at this point we have a motion with a second, and would we take a verbal or a verbal voice vote?
Absolutely. Pereira,
Aye.
Castellano,
Aye.
Hogan,
Aye.
Bone,
Aye.
Wilson.
Yes. That motion passes. So we have our elected positions for at least till the end of the fiscal year 2021. Next item isn't that accepting of capital improvement?
No, that was last November's agenda.
I'm sorry, Joe.
That was last November's agenda item.
Throw that away, Frank, and go to the next page.
We should be on page 41 of 63.
41 of 63. All right. Received the presentation of zero waste. I've just to have a comment. One of our council members watched this on, I believe, Access Humboldt on Arcata's council, and was very impressed with this. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation.
Excellent. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce Maggie Gaynor. She is with Zero Waste Humboldt, and she's going to be providing us this presentation. Tyler, if you could arrange to share your screen with Maggie so she can load up her presentation.
Maggie, you should have full ability to share currently. If not, let me know.
And I see that she's got her microphone on, but I'm not hearing or seeing her yet.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Good.
Let me go back one step here. I was all loaded and ready to go, and now let's see. I've dropped out of the, maybe if I just click back on my Zoom screen. Yeah, there we go. Okay, sorry folks. There's me, and let's see, share screen. And you can't see what I've got.
No.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, open it up a little bit and it should go. Okay, excellent.
Well, good evening, Chair Wilson, board members and staff, and thank you for this opportunity to just update you on the field of zero waste and what we're doing locally in Humboldt County. This is an exciting time to be involved in zero waste. There's lots going on internationally, around the country, and in California, and locally, even in spite of the virus. About every 15, and I'm just old enough that I see patterns. About every 15 to 20 years, there's a lot of legislative activity, and driven by new environmental concerns that are then pressured to the California legislature, and they pass new laws. So, for example, CRV program was created in 1987, and AB 939 began implementation in 1990, and that's sort of where all the recycling rules and everything have really been generated. These and others laws at the time were all driven by concern over shrinking real estate for landfills in California, siting new landfills, trying to contain the ones that we already have. And then in the past 10 years, newer legislation has been driven more by concerns about climate change and what it's doing to California. And this is creating a new focus on waste prevention, materials reuse, and new methods for measuring progress. So it's more sustainable materials management, and the field is gradually changing. I'm going to start with a fast forward about zero waste, our local organization, and what we've been doing in different types of work, different projects, and then go into what I call hopes and dreams and aspirations for local economic development in integrating locally collected recyclable material and materials reuse into our economy. So just for starters, zero waste is comprehensive. It is not recycling on steroids. It's sustainable materials management, a hierarchy of priority, and that we Just did 2 sessions this week, webinars specifically for businesses, and we just emphasize that over and over again. The old 3 R's have changed a little bit. We've learned from fields like public health that waste prevention is easier for people to understand and is not as confusing. And so waste prevention is the new, first R. And it is the top priority, upstream, upfront, proactive. Biggest bang for the effort is at the point of purchase, whether you're a business working with vendors or you're going to the grocery store as an individual. Second is materials reuse, and that's what we're really working on, is many different systems for reuse. Some of them are actually going back to ways we did business in years past prior to modern day recycling, and but with some new technology and modernizing. Then recycling, then composting. So that priority order for analysis of if you're a school district or local government or a business and you want to reduce waste, that's the order that you go in. Those first 2 R's of waste prevention, reduce, and reuse have been terribly neglected over the past, well, since 1990. Zero waste is based on 10 international principles, one of them being to strive for the highest and best use of each material type so that the materials collected can be integrated into your local economy as feedstock for manufacturers, materials reuse, exchange among businesses, a variety of different ways. Achieving the highest and best use of recovered materials has become more difficult in recent years because of contamination and mixed recycling collection. Zero waste, one of the hallmarks of zero waste is better measurement and monitoring to establish baseline data. And fearless, because you've got accurate data to work with, then you're able to get into what I call fearless goal setting. People are sometimes nervous about setting goals, but it really helps you learn. And so that you can say, by this time, 2 years from now, we want to reduce the waste generated of this material type by this much. My little graphic images here. One of the things that's become most popular that we do is Zero Heroes Night. And so once a year we honor a handful of local businesses, sometimes individuals. This one particular year, an HSU faculty member who has been very motivating. And it's become a lot of fun, and we're learning to connect it now with our new program coming up that I'll tell you more about. So Zero Waste Humboldt. We brought the Zero Waste movement to Humboldt County in 2011, actually to develop more alternatives to solely mixed recycling collection. Incorporated it in late 2014 as a local nonprofit organization. It remains the only organization solely specializing in developing zero waste solutions, problem solving. We have 3 main services. Public education that is aimed at behavioral change, new habits, adopting new habits, helping the public to understand this and then take action, and institutional change in our businesses, incorporating it into how we do business every day. Advocacy and policy development with our local governments and training and technical assistance, in particular with our local businesses, school districts, and others. Recent projects and services. One of the ones I'm hoping that some of you know about is the Refill Not Landfill Network, in which we awarded 10 water bottle refill stations to Blue Lake, McKinleyville Community Services District, City of Arcata, City of Eureka, City of Fortuna, and Arcata McKinleyville High Schools. The cool thing about this one is often waste prevention and reuse is difficult to measure your progress, which is one of the reasons why they've been so neglected. And with water bottle refill stations, we ordered for our local governments in this network. We made sure that our models had a clicker, a counter. So what we have learned so far, and this does not include this past crazy year, because many of these have been positioned, installed in Parks and Rec programs, buildings. But it's an average of 50,000 single-use plastic water bottles have been prevented from our waste stream just by making those more convenient for the public. And that was just 10. So we're hoping, we worked hard to raise the money to be able to award them to local governments, and we would like to expand that. We worked with the city of Arcata to develop its zero waste action plan, and now assisting Eureka with its. We have an annual We Choose to Reuse social media campaign. I'll show you a few snapshots. It's just fun, and more people send in to us photographs of in their business, their workplace, or at home, or shopping, how they are reusing. Annual Zero Heroes Night I've told you about. And then this year, this is part of what we had 2 webinars this week that I've been solely focused on, our Zero Waste Business Certification Program. And it's going to benefit the businesses in a number of ways. One of the things it does for the community is helps to maintain standards. Now that zero waste has become popular, everybody wants to say they have a zero waste product, a zero waste school district, a zero waste business, and this helps to make sure that that's so. It also really helps with management information, and then it's Zero Waste Humboldt's job to promote all of the certified businesses as good examples for others to learn from. So here is a collage of all of these different types of projects and activities. You'll see on the bottom left, Ms. Pereira, we roped her in several times to help us. She's working at the in this example at the North Country Fair, which has become a model, just an extraordinary example of what you can do. They had huge dumpsters, and we're just throwing way too much away or having way too much to recycle even. And with our work over a period of 3 years with their vendors and everything, and in the public, dramatic reduction in how much that 2-day event on the Arcata Plaza, how much waste it generates. You can see some examples here of the We Choose to Reuse social media type thing that we do. The zebras are a youth program. These are large zebras that are all primed and ready for parades for youth groups. And then we had the virus. And so we'll hope to put them into action soon. What we've worked with a couple of environmental educators who've done a great job of developing a packet full of activities for, it was originally intended for after school programs and scouts and youth groups like that. They were all excited about it. And then now we're getting them out to the schools to get out to parents who are stuck at home with their kids. And our whole purpose was for these activities to be fun and convey a sense of waste prevention, reducing waste. None of them are recycling activities. On the bottom corner, on the right side, this is one of my favorites because it's 3 generations of one family that decided to all get active in helping us in outdoor events. So, and you can see all these bags. I'm sure some of you remember a few years back, we worked really hard with other zero waste organizations around the state to get that state law passed for single-use plastic bags. The one on the top left is that thin flyaway film plastic that is so problematic for wildlife and the environment. And I don't know about you guys, but There's a few of us that for years have done a count as we go between Arcata and Eureka just on 101, and there are far fewer. I mean, I actually have driven that 8 miles at times, and there are none. And before, they were just kind of glittering along the highway all the time. So just a bunch of examples for you. This is what we were busy doing yesterday. We were fortunate to have some of the best and the brightest around the Western states join us. This is new for us to, every other year we have training specifically for businesses. Usually about 25 businesses come together, and this is our first to do it as a webinar. And so far the feedback is that it worked well, and our goal was to, before it cost around $200, and now to be certified with a national organization that we work with, it costs over $1,000. And we wanted it to be more convenient, more affordable, and more relevant for small businesses in a rural area like the Redwood Coast. Well, a number of things came up, none of which I think would surprise you, but you're our elected leaders and be good to let you know. Zero waste infrastructure. We mostly have infrastructure for recycling and not so much for reuse and in different types of waste prevention. In particular, I'm thinking about reuse systems. So for example, getting more the plumbing and everything for more water bottle refill stations is infrastructure that's needed for reuse so that we don't have to have so many single-use plastic water bottles. Just one example. There are more and more. The last time I checked into how many apps there were to help local governments, universities, a variety of different entities with food waste reduction, especially edible food waste, so that if you've got a big banquet or you've got food left over that is clean and edible, that you can get it to people who need it. There were about 15, and that was a couple of years ago, and I think it's just skyrocketed. So a part of that infrastructure are apps and ways to improve, make it easier for us to do the work of waste prevention and materials reuse. Composting, none of you will be surprised by that.
Maggie?
Yes.
On the refill stations, isn't it a little more convenient if maybe you just targeted wherever there was a water faucet, so you didn't have to worry about the plumbing infrastructure first and then worked from the circle out, rather than wasting so much on infrastructure? But you still have places where there are people already migrating to a fountain and already have that inbred knee-jerk reaction to go to that because they know they can get water, and putting them there on a much more faster basis. Because I can think of about 3 or 4 places that still have water fountains, and I know that they sell probably 60 to 80 water bottles a day minimum during their appropriate seasons.
Let me add to your point that you're making. A lot of those old-fashioned drinking fountains have, if you'll notice, a little metal, it's almost like a little cap right in the bowl of the drinking fountain.
Yeah.
And there's a very inexpensive adapter that kind of is shaped like this. And then it has a thing that you just bump your bottle up to and the water comes out. I think they cost around $150. We've been told that we now have become experts in all the different models and shapes and types, outside ones that are sturdier. They're the more expensive inside ones, interior. But we've been told what I just described to you, that adapter to a drinking fountain, is not the best for schools because kids are too rough on them. But for offices and government buildings, I think that could be really affordable. The problem that we've run into a couple of times, so these became in that network of 10 our partners, and we contact them once or twice a year, and then they read that counter and tell us how many times it's been used. If because of plumbing reasons, the city of Eureka received 4 of them from us and put them around town in their different government buildings. A couple of them have been tucked away in places that just are not highly trafficked. There's just not a lot of people, and because that's where it could most easily get the plumbing. So I don't know if you get my point, Rex, but you got to have. They're not if they're not in a location that are well used, then that's where you end up with in our network, the partners, local governments deal with the plumbing a little bit more. So let me think of, and then one of the other areas that I will only touch on, we talked quite a bit about yesterday with the businesses, is zero waste in the time of COVID-19. And there's some real specific things about that. In fact, this might be jumping to it. The facts are that COVID-19 is airborne. So all the research, and we have been bird dogging this since March. The research says, the results of the research is because it's airborne, wear a mask, wash your surfaces, wash your hands frequently, maintain 6 feet or more. The research does not indicate any evidence of food packaging being related to transmission. In fact, there have been several research centers, universities, and the first one that did it was in Wuhan in March 2020. They tested the transmissibility of surfaces: glass, metal, plastics, wood, mylar, cloth, which would be for us cloth shopping bags. Guess which surface had that the virus lingered the longest? It's plastic. So what we're learning is a lot of the local businesses, in particular food serving and food manufacturing businesses, were not always going to the best sources for their information. And so at CDC, Food and Drug Administration, there are 3 or 4, even EPA, federal agencies that have very good websites, science-based information to advise you on what to do with your business so that your employees and your customers are as safe as you can help the environment in your business to be. And then, of course, locally, we have always, at Zero Waste Humboldt, we contact public health departments, environmental health services at least a couple times a year to make sure our public education is accurate. And they're very knowledgeable, and they've always been really helpful. So that has been our main point, is from the get-go for businesses, make sure you're getting I think some of them were getting their information from the California Restaurant Association, which has got to be connected to the people who are manufacturing all the single-use plastic doodads and convincing them that they needed to switch from, we were making great strides in Humboldt County. Businesses in particular were going for it and switching from plastics to paper and fiber. And in particular, the top priority is reusable, sanitized, refillable, reusable dinnerware and utensils. So that's a real quick summary on just what's going on with COVID. This next one is primarily for folks who are working in economic development. And you heard me mention a priority of, if you're just collecting and shipping it out further and further away, its environmental value of the recycling collection program is for several material types almost a wash. So the more, we've always referred to it as closing the loop and creating local end-use markets for your locally collected secondary resources, your recyclable material. More often today, you'll hear it referred to as the circular economy. So folks will often leap to number 4. Well, let's start up a new business venture. We all know how difficult it is to start up new business ventures in Humboldt County. People do it every day. They're entrepreneurial, they're resourceful. I honor that, and have worked in economic development for a long time. An easier path is, business retention is sort of the new industry attraction, just holding on to the businesses that you have and helping them connect their materials. So I won't go into more detail here. I'll show you just a few examples of what I'm talking about. And I'm hoping that if you have any interest in this in particular, we'll be working more closely with the Prosperity Network of economic development folks in the coming months. Our belief is that this could be taken very seriously as an integral part of our local regional economic renewal recovery from the pandemic.
Maggie,
Yeah.
to the chair.
You want me to go back?
No, I know. I've got a question.
Mhm.
I mean, where that all sounds good and everything else, but we as a county can't even pick up our cans and plastic bottles. I mean, we can't even reset. Well, I guess we can reset, but I mean, we can't even fulfill our obligation for that. But expect, do you find that a problem going out of the realm on this?
I'm not sure I understand, Rex.
I mean, my neighbor has 14 bags of recyclables. He asks me every day where he can take them, and I tell him Crescent City every day.
Oh, wow.
He wants. We can't even. We have to send things out of county to be.
So are you referring to the difficulties with drop-off, the CRV drop-off center?
CRV drop-off, payback, whatever the case may be. There's an overlying sense with an entrepreneurial spirit. I just wondered with that pushback. I mean, we can't even organize that. How are we going to organize?
Yeah, let me go
yard out at Redwood Acres.
You'll see I think if I go a little bit further, you'll see the difference between what my examples are and what you're talking about. It is serious. I understand what you're saying. And again, what we're offering is, I'll be honest with you. If over the past 10 years, the past 20 years, since AB 939 was first implemented in 1990, if public and private resources, human resources, and in particular financial resources, if a teeny tiny fraction of those resources that had been dedicated solely to recycling infrastructure and recycling collection in particular had been dedicated to materials reuse systems, recycling would be doing better. It's back on that hierarchy of those old three R's. And so the overemphasis on recycling has caused problems, and the overemphasis on landfills. So this is a new way of thinking that it is going to slowly be changing how we look at all of this. So this is just one example. The amount of energy and resources that go into all of these different material types of this, I think this is about a 4-year-old business. They've recently given themselves a new name, the Reschool, because they not only sell salvaged building materials, they also coach and train and help folks see how to use these resources. So they not only sell what you see here, but in the middle is a coffee table that one of them designed and made from secondary resources. So it's a local salvage company, and we need more of those. This is not reuse, this is recycling. So local Eureka artist is a manufacturer, a small scale of, her source are all of the pill bottles from pharmacies. That one particular, I mean, it's really smart. It's one particular type of plastic. And she makes jewelry and buttons and has a few products. So this is value added. which is really what you want for everything that gets, before it gets shipped out of Humboldt County as a low value recyclable material. See what you can do with it locally in your own region. Recycling programs were never originally intended for the materials to be shipped far away, especially not intended to be shipped to China or Malaysia or Southeast Asia. And so the more that we can apply them to our own local economy, the better they are for the environment and our local economy. So just a few more. This one is more reuse. Again, Beth Cabot's business, she started it in 1987 because she was noticing dumpsters full of clean fiber fill from a local sleeping bag manufacturer, and began making pillows with her design. The materials, I mean, she's just a great example of a small business working with the byproducts of larger businesses. So even the canvas, the white material that she works with to make her products are from other larger businesses. This is a project that we were just about to start with as a pilot and have held until we can really go with it. But probably all of you know how badly Amazon Prime and those types of businesses are affecting all of our small businesses. And then on top of it, they're shipping goods in overpackaged in box inside a box and with lots of plastics. So this is would not be to create a warehouse with a bunch of these materials for reuse. It would be online information exchange where businesses could post, every month I get a shipment of 20 of boxes of this type, come and get them. And so we're hoping to develop that further. Now, this is more into the arena of, in years past, I would say 25 years ago, we did research on this, and it almost penciled out. This is molded fiber containers, just molded products and packaging of different types. So what we're trying to get away from is getting your blueberries in the clear plastic, but instead, here's a variety of different kinds of examples. One is literally a little miniature corrugated cardboard box as a carton for berries and other fragile fruit. And then the white one that is just, it's bleached. And our favorite one is the one on the left. These kinds of things are made out of, one of the main pieces of equipment that you need is a hydropulper. It's just like a giant washing machine. And it's just, you put your waste paper in, you turn it into a slurry. It's dried and molded into whatever you want. In years past, that was how again, I'm so old that was how I always did my shopping when I went to, it was always, my berries came in little purple or blue dyed cartons, egg cartons. We started to go to styrofoam and plastics, and now we're seeing more and more that actually in that particular food product, the paper molded cartons are, I think, a little better for protecting the eggs. The thing on the far left came out of a shoe that I just bought. Again, it's just a molded product out of waste paper. So in years past, a lot of these different kinds of things, there was kind of like there was only one main size for paper mills, for molded fiber equipment. It's not so much that case anymore. And it makes me hopeful. You can now get them so that they can be sized appropriately for your rural area or for a smaller type producer. One more example. This one's exciting. We started researching this. Well, and I will take one step back. It's a popular concept in about every 5 to 10 years, the idea comes back up again. I'd say over the years, at least twice, I've been drawn into an analysis of could this be a viable business venture in Humboldt County or in the North Coast region, and it is return to returnables. The research is showing, I just read Zero Waste Europe just turned out in early December 7th, a report on research that the energy consumed, the carbon footprint of the returnable system for beer, sodas, ciders, dairy, milk is considerably, I want to say 84% less than the carbon footprint for recycling, crushing the bottles, melting it down, starting all over again. It is far better for the environment. So we have 4 different departments, 4 different disciplines, faculty and their students researching and helping us with different component parts of what could, the analysis to see if local breweries, many of whom are just hanging on right now because of the virus, but we're pursuing this. This model in Marin is going quite well. Oregon has had this system for years, and so they've really, it's kind of tried and true there. And I don't know if any of you have traveled or have family or whatever in Missoula, Montana, but if you have, you'll notice that in its population size, its business population is roughly the same as our greater Humboldt Bay area. And they do a great job of this refillable. So you take the bottles back to where you bought them, or if the brewery or the winery is near, then you take it right back there. They're sanitized and they're refilled locally. So that's it. I'm open for questions. I zoomed through a lot. There's a, I thought, should I talk about legislation? And I rather wanted to just give you some examples of what we're working on and what could be if groups of us work together. We really hope that the locally collected materials can become, and reusable materials can become more a part of our local economy. I want to recommend, before I wrap up here, a film. It's 54 minutes. It's easy to find on YouTube, or you can just go to PBS Frontline and it will come up. It's called Plastic Wars. It's only 54 minutes. It's well researched and it's very current. In the past, some of these types of documentaries, they dwelled a little bit too much on drowning polar bears and the magnitude of the problem. And this really, it's eye-opening. It really explains a lot of how we got to where we are with plastics. And again, a number of the recently retired lead executives of the plastics industry, it's almost like they've taken a truth serum or something when they're being interviewed by these journalists from PBS and NPR. They're actually telling the truth, and it's kind of shocking how much we've been bamboozled. Even myself, in working in the field for so long. So I want to urge everyone to take advantage of that film because it'll lend to your understanding. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Maggie?
I have a quick question, Frank.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, Maggie, if you're aware of the waste characterization study that HWMA has been doing.
Yes. Yeah, I've been paying attention. I don't know if something just recently has been reported, but I think last November, December. As Jill has reported on that information, it's important source for all of us.
Perfect. Yeah, it seems like it could be useful in determining some of your policies and kind of future planning once it's all wrapped up.
Let me mention something about that. This is just, it's the nature of a changing marketplace, a global market, and just how we're living our lives. It impacts our waste stream. When most of our beverages were coming to us in glass, that was heavier. Now, if more soda bottles and other water and other kinds of bottles are, and just plastics of all types, they're featherweight. So that's kind of hard because it mixes apples and oranges, or kiwis and watermelons, one being much heavier than the other, but plastics is even more problematic to the environment. And so, those kind of reports almost need an addendum now to just explain that. And that's part of why we're excited about this emphasis on, we'll be tracking more the carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions of different things that we do to reduce waste.
Any other questions for Maggie? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. We appreciate your presentation, and it's a lot of good stuff to think about. And society needs to make some changes on how they think about how they deal with the commodities that they buy. All right. The next item that we have on the agenda is item 6. And this is the receive and approve mid-year fiscal year 2020-21. And that starts on page 43.
That is absolutely correct. We're going to be turning this portion of the presentation over to Tyler.
Thank you. For this presentation, I'll mostly be referring to page 45, which is where the changes are listed. As a reminder for board members, we did this similarly last year. We used to present the entire budget redone with the changes that we made in each line item. But in prior years, we made significantly more changes in our mid-year budget than we have in the last 2 years. As you'll see on page 45, about halfway down, there are 6 items that we're requesting the board consider changing directly. And these are mostly indirect costs that drive a significant portion of our operations. Throughout the rest of the report, and I won't hit it too much, the changes are more automatic based on the trends we're seeing. So every year we tend to reevaluate tonnage, of course, for solid waste, which is our primary funding mechanism. But we aren't seeing a huge change in the total tonnage this year like we sometimes do. One of the reasons for that is, and of course you're going to hear this with most items on this agenda item, the pandemic has changed the way we receive tonnage, but not the total amount that we've received. So there was a depression in franchise tonnage and to some extent construction tonnage for the first 4 to 5 months of the pandemic leading into the beginning of the new fiscal year. And during that depression, we saw a counterbalance in self-haul tonnage. We were busier than we've been in a long time. I think all summer long we had lines out to the street with customers coming in with anything from minimum charges to $40, $50 loads, which you see regularly, but not this regularly. And so we had a tonnage rebalancing where self-haul counterbalanced the tonnage that we lost from franchise, mostly because people were home and needed something to do, and we were open the entire time. Of course, we've adjusted some of our other programs for the impacts of the pandemic on shutting them down, such as hazardous waste and programs at the recycling center. But those are all sort of automatically generated by the business and as we see what is and isn't open. Primarily, what you have on page 45 is a list of those items that need to be addressed to maintain the budget as it will be balanced. And in this case, we're actually seeing an increase in the money we expect to see in. This is also something we don't normally have happen. We're anticipating a $40,000 increase in revenue after the adjustment to these expenses, primarily because in operations, we've had to put on hold several projects that would have started before the winter or would come online in spring, but the challenges of bringing in contractors while we're still in purple tier or while we didn't know what was going to be happening throughout the summer meant that we've delayed a lot of these projects to the next fiscal year. You'll see these expenses come through in that budget when we present the draft in April. So really what we're requesting is moving the $40,000 increase in revenue into undesignated reserves, which we will most likely realign and pull out for next year to be able to enact a lot of these projects. Where you see increases requested, these are things that, again, directly to relate to how things have been operating during the pandemic. We have asked customers to switch to credit cards versus cash to eliminate transfers back and forth between our staff. And most customers have responded in kind. So we've seen a large increase in credit card fees. Additionally, we've seen a lot of extra costs related to software. These are either ongoing monthly costs for new programs, subscriptions to things, of course, such as Zoom, which we are currently using, streaming software that I'm using to record our meetings and broadcast them to YouTube, and equipment for managers and work-at-home staff to make it easier for all of us to continue to do the work we need to do while not mixing too many people up. Of course, the other side of that too is a reduction in office expenses. Because we haven't had full-time staff in the office until recently, we've spent less money on the regular expenses we would see in the office. That is the long and short of it. This list on page 45, we're requesting those changes be approved, and then I will adjust the budget as directed and move from there. But I'm available for questions, of course.
Does anyone have questions for Tyler?
Yeah, Frank.
Go ahead.
Sure. I just, on the software expenses, how many staff do we have working from home rather than in the office, considering our offices don't have, in-person contact as much? How many do we have at home? And
that's the 4 managers. We also have our health and safety coordinator, Laurel, doing some work from home. A lot of her work doesn't require her to be in the office, so she can, in fact, spend a lot more time there. In rereading my own report, this is a bit of a misnomer because it also includes increased equipment costs for server upgrades that have improved the speeds at which we work. Our internet was fairly poorly designed and wasn't built to handle the load of 3 to 4 people a day pulling from the server at work to their work computers. So that also includes server upgrades, improvements to hazardous waste to allow for better communication. And so that's
fine. That's fine, because it was coming out about $2,500 a person, and that just seemed.
It's a whole lot if you look at it that way, and that was unanticipated. I think I just didn't edit that well enough.
Fine. Just a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any more questions, Rex?
No, I'm good.
Anyone else have questions for Tyler? Hearing none. Do we have any questions from the public on this? I'm not sure where we look to see. There's a hand raised. Jill.
I see no
Yeah.
one looking to ask.
So we have
So
none?
we're just looking for the board to move the staff recommendations to
No.
accept.
No. Okay.
You need a
Go
motion
ahead.
for that?
Yes.
Would someone entertain that motion?
Accept the presentation. Move to accept presentation.
The presentation or the request to transfer funds.
Well,
You could move
makes it
staff's
sound like it's a
recommendations.
non-action item, but if we're moving funds, it's an action item, right?
It is an action item, that is correct. It's to approve the submitted list of budget transfers and adjustments in the amount of $42,000.
I move staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
You have a second?
Was that Leslie? Who?
That was Director
Thank you.
Costello. Yes.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Would you take a voice vote?
Pereira,
Aye.
Castellano,
Aye.
Hogan,
Aye.
Bone,
Yep.
and Wilson.
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. Next item is item 7. Receive and approve fiscal year 2019-20 audit. And I believe that was a separate attachment on the agenda. I know it's a little booklet.
That is correct. This will also be a presentation that Tyler will be presenting to the board, and you're absolutely correct. Frank, there's a hard copy of the JJACPA audit for fiscal year 1920.
With any luck, some members of the board have at least received it. I see Leslie glancing through it as we speak. So, but obviously for those of you that haven't or that prefer the digital version, that was sent out in email and is available online for anybody participating or following along at home. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. There's obviously a lot of information, but the audit covers really 2 to 3 main points that highlight the fiscal standing of the authority. For this presentation, I will mostly be referring to page 8 of the audit, which is under the title of Financial Analysis of the Authority as a Whole Continued. This presents the authority's financial information in a very quick summary as compared to the prior year. In this audit, there are essentially what we look for and what we talk about when we look at the authority's strength is the authority's net position. This generally we have been working to reduce the deficit that we've currently held and actually have held since before I started a long time ago. So we've been working to reduce that through a number of program efficiencies, through closure of the Cummings Road landfill, and through improving our asset profile through smart purchases, leases versus outright purchases, and acquisition of property, for instance, in relation to the Cummings Road burn ash site and the forest property that surrounds the Cummings Road landfill. However, the landfill is also the biggest source of change in our deficit. And this year, it is almost entirely the primary reason that we see that $800,000 reduction or increase, I'm sorry, in the deficit. We were at about 2.6 million last year. By the end of 2020, that had increased to negative 3.4 million. And that comes from a reevaluation of the landfill's post-closure estimate. As most of you are probably aware, the landfill is now in post-closure, and the authority is on the hook for 30 years of post-closure maintenance. Construction was completed in October of 2015. And full closure was received in 2016, which started the clock in reducing that liability. And so every year, as part of the audit, we do actually reduce the total liability of the landfill's post-closure maintenance by the annual estimated cost from our engineers, Lawrence and Associates. However, every even year, we also have to reevaluate that post-closure estimate for our auditors as part of the audit process. And in 2020, we did just that with Clayton Coles from Lawrence and Associates. And he informed us that there was a new policy change from CalRecycle in how the estimate is calculated. CalRecycle is now requiring landfill operators to record the full cost of replacement of all major equipment for the landfill over that 30-year life. That includes wells, pumps, the piping systems that connect all of them. Essentially, we now have to plan for full replacement of everything at the landfill, whether or not we will actually do that. And from our engineers, the indication is, of course, no landfill has ever been faced with this. But the going concern for CalRecycle, of course, is that after 30 years, landfills aren't just magically gone. That land is still there. That land still requires maintenance. And under that 30-year limitation, they want to make sure that there is adequate funding for operations, most likely beyond that 30-year maximum. This increases our liability. We record this in our balance sheet. You see it every month in our financials, as well as in the financials included in this audit. And that impacts our overall deficit. It doesn't impact our ability to do our job or our tip fees, because that liability is essentially just an estimated cost. So we don't incur it with the exception of the annual expense. That $390,000 is represented as a line item in our countywide program fees, which are passed through to every ton of waste that's generated in Humboldt County, regardless of where it's taken. So if it goes to our satellite facilities, those people pay that tonnage. If it's taken out of county by self-haulers to Dry Creek Landfill, to Anderson Landfill, Potrero Hills, any of those other places, they also have to report that and pay those program fees. And along with that is management of the Cummings Road landfill. So we make sure that the program fee always represents that. And therefore, we don't see the impacts of that year to year. We do see it in our overall, essentially, well-being. What's important about that is that current debt is about $10 million, or that current liability is about $10 million. And our deficit is well underneath that, which means that we are in a very strong position. We've been growing our investment in our capital assets. As you would see in the, let me see, I'm sorry, not on page 5. As you see on page 13, our investment in capital assets has grown year over year. And that means that not only are we eliminating debt on our equipment, on our property, and on the things that we actually own, but we're increasing that value, whether it's through smart purchases, whether it's through purchases with shorter term, of course, lease or loan agreements, or whether it's acquisition, again, of property, such as the forest property around Cummings Road landfill. We are growing our asset profile, which makes us stronger in what we own and simply bearing the cost of that closure long term. So we'll see that affect us every year. Generally, we'll see that reduce, but every 2 years, we are going to see a big change depending on what the market influences are currently on that total post-closure estimate. The second...
Tyler, I want to add one more thing. And one of the reasons that the state requires that we go through this exercise, and the fact that we have to default to the numbers that they require us to, is they need to ensure that in the event that HWMA or whoever the landfill operator is not available, that funds have been established so that the state could then assume operation of the landfill at that fully burdened cost. So that's, kind of the principle behind the exercise, if you will. So it is kind of a paper exercise, but it has the very real impact of making our financial figures look a little less rosy as a result of that.
That is correct. Thanks. Second, and somewhat in line with that, is our long-term debt and our debt service ratio. For this, if you look at pages 24 and 40, you'll see information related to our long-term debt. Now, this was the very first debt that we acquired was back in 2002. When we assisted in the enhancement of the transfer station. In 2005, we acquired Waste Solutions Group and folded that 2002 bond debt into that to create one bond instrument. We've been carrying that debt since 2002 with a planned sunset of November 1st, 2021. We are on track to make our final payment in November on the 1st. We have 2 payments left, $400,000 in May, and then an $800,000 one-time payment in November that will clear that out. This will be the first time that the authority has not had a ton of debt holding over itself since 2002. So it's a very good place to be. As most of you will recall during the November meeting, in discussing the capital improvement plan, this is one of the items that we've been looking forward to in terms of making plans for our next big push on projects that will help either divert from the waste stream or increase reuse of materials, whatever that may look like. And part of the reason that we pulled the materials recovery facility off is that things have changed, and there are a lot of plans that we could make with a new and extremely healthy financial profile without that long-term debt. So it's a very exciting time because we will see that debt clear. We'll have about $800,000 per year to discuss what we do with. And that can be a number of things. So it's a very exciting time. In the meantime, and you'll notice this in the communication letter, which was included as a third attachment to this board packet, the one finding that our auditors have made is that, again, this year we did not make our debt service ratio. If you'll recall in 2015, and for those of you that weren't here, we refinanced our long-term debt with Chase Bank. They offered us an extremely competitive interest rate, drove our annual payments down by about $400,000, and still made it that we would sunset on November 1st, 2021. One of the reasons we did that is because back then we also weren't meeting our debt service ratio. And under a bond issuance, you actually have to and are forced to change your revenue generation to meet the threshold, which is back then was 125% of net income. So you have to raise your tip. For us, we have to raise our tip fees to meet that, whether we want to or not. Under the loan, that debt service ratio has become a target. As long as we have cash on hand to make the payments and Chase sees that we are sufficiently capitalized to get rid of this debt, they're okay. It is, of course, a really good target to hit. We would rather be at 1 than the 0.8 that we're currently at. But one of the things that we've been able to do without having to hit that target is not only reduce some of the overflow of reserves we had from about 5 to 6 years back, but we've actually been able to maintain our tip fees at the same rate for about 6 years now, which is a pretty unprecedented achievement compared to the history of HWMA, in which these tip fees fluctuated up and down almost at will and almost annually. So it's been an unprecedented period of stability. It's allowed us to make some critical changes at the transfer station and the landfill. It's allowed us to effect full closure of the landfill without impacting tip fees too hard. And of course, the stability has made things quite easy for us in the last few years to discuss new projects, to finalize other things. And it's just been a very good time for everybody. So while we haven't hit that target and while the auditors have called it out, of course, I speak with Chase on an annual basis, make sure that they're seeing our financials. We have never heard anything about that problem. And of course, by November 1st, we'll have paid it off. So it won't even be a target we need to hit until we get new debt, which I foresee coming up not too long after we take a break. Finally, I think overall, I could go through some of the fluctuations in revenues and expenses. I could get into some detail, but I think the most important thing about the current financials is that operations have stabilized. Expenses are essentially identical year to year. Revenue fluctuates because of items that cause it to fluctuate, because we haven't had a chance to plan, or because we've offered new programs at no fee. So this last year, we saw a reduction in revenue because of our timber harvesting. We did a timber harvest the first year we fully acquired the forest property. And we won't do that every year. So we won't always have that revenue to report, which will automatically mean that year to year, we will see sometimes a raise and sometimes a dip. That this last year was about half of that. The other half is wrapped up in items where we might have seen some smaller revenue streams, but more importantly, we have offered now residential hazardous waste and e-waste drop-off at no charge. These have, of course, an impact to authority financials, but they're part of a $150,000 drop in overall revenues, something that we've easily been able to absorb and roll in by finding other efficiencies, even during a pandemic, which I think is a big thumbs up to our operations crew and all of our staff in working to make sure that our finances are taking care of our ratepayers at the most responsible they can be. Without going into too much more detail on that, I think I can leave it there and open it up for questions if you have any.
Fine. Do we have questions for Tyler? Anyone?
I'm also just going to add in right now, I don't see any hands raised, which with the audit, I'm always a thumbs up on at this point.
I did have a couple of questions. I don't know if they're directly audit. One of those questions is, who did HWMA take the landfill over from? Didn't we pay $1 for it and then we assumed it?
Yeah, we purchased it from Eureka City Garbage Company, and they are today known as Recology.
So they sold it to HWMA, which became a JPA, and has taken care of that. And actually, so the benefactor was the Recology or the Humboldt, whatever it was, Eureka Garbage Company.
I would actually call the benefactors the residents of the city of Eureka, because they were the primary residents who disposed of their material. The last 20 years of the landfill, the county of Humboldt and the city of Arcata directed their materials there. Most of the material down in southern Humboldt went to Table Bluff and the old Eel River. It was a former burn site there. But in essence, the residents of Eureka would be the ones obligated to bear the burden of the sole 30 years post-closure responsibility. And then with the formation of HWMA and the joint agreement that all of the cities and jurisdictions would be responsible for the long-term maintenance and monitoring for the site. The other key piece of property that was acquired was the actual transfer station that we are in now, in addition to the adjacent property that is currently holding Recology's operations in there. The transfer station was insufficient size to handle all of the material that was generated by HWMA's member agencies, so that there was that expansion. So that was the upgrade that Tyler was referencing for that first purchase of the bond. And then, of course, we had outsourced through a contractor, WSG, which we later bought them out of that contract and brought in all the operations in-house. But the landfill at that time was originally owned, even older than that. It went back to, I'm suddenly blanking. That's so funny. Begins with an S. Rex will remember who they were. Strombeck, thank you. Stig. So that was originally a small privately owned landfill, and it has gone on from there. Back in the 30s, actually.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
Sig was, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I rode my motorcycle up there as a child, so that would have been in a long time ago.
Don't date yourself. So I don't know if that helps you.
That helps me a lot. Where does who came responsible for Table Bluff? Aren't we responsible for that as well?
We collect a fee on behalf of the county, but it's the county of Humboldt that's responsible for the ongoing maintenance and monitoring of the Table Bluff landfill.
Okay. That's the one I remember.
Yeah.
We were always taking stuff to Table Bluff. So
Me too.
all right, and my other question was directed to Tyler. You said that we're going to do away with our debt, but you anticipate long debt coming along in the future. Can I ask what that is?
I say that somewhat facetiously right now, not having a plan for it. But Director Wilson, if you remember from November, when we pulled the materials recovery facility, it was actually Director Castellano and Pereira, especially, that wanted to make sure that we didn't just walk away from doing new projects. One of the things that I anticipate is we will most likely have new projects that come up that require a not insignificant outlay of funds. And obviously the collection of that on the tip fee alone would be too much to bear, with the exception that we will have this extra money to put away to strengthen any sort of financial tool that we get to move forward with new projects. So I say that not knowing what those projects are, though I do anticipate, if not in the near future, within the next few years, we'll probably be looking at new projects. We don't tend to sit back too long, even when we are moving at a very steady pace.
All right, thank you. Those are all the questions I have. Are there any other questions for Tyler? Or any questions from the public? I'm hearing none. So there's no motions associated with this, is it? This is all a receive and file?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we will file this now. Unless there was anything special that had come up, we are good.
Okay, next item then, as we move on, would be item 8, which is the approve, it's on page 49, and approve select timber harvesting activities on authorities' forest properties. You say it goes back to the executive director?
It does. Thank you very much. If you'll give me a moment, Tyler, if you'll allow me to share the screen.
You should be good to go. Let me know if you don't see it.
Yeah, my screen just shrank down, so hold on one second. Let's try this. Of all the times for my mouse not to want to work, right? So this is a pretty short presentation, and I do want to introduce that we have both Jim Abel from Jim Abel Forestry, in addition to Dave Cousins, both available. They'll be stepping in midway through the presentations with some of the information. So it's good to see everybody, and it's actually really kind of nice to see that everybody has remained pretty stable. I was kind of anticipating that with the beginning of the new year, we might see some new faces on here. So this evening, as discussed in the staff report, we are asking the board to direct the executive director to authorize Jim Abel Forestry Consulting to solicit bids on behalf of HWMA for a 2021 selective timber harvest agreement, and that you would authorize me to review and execute all necessary contracts and agreements following review by General Counsel, and then other direction as appropriate. For purposes of folks who may or may not be familiar with the Cummings Road landfill, HWMA's own timber properties surround the Cummings Road landfill, which is located approximately 2 miles southeast of the city of Eureka. And this virtual demonstration simply illustrates the view from the top of the landfill, and it overlooks the sedimentation pond down there towards the middle of the screen, looking to the west. It's just a little quick orientation for folks. This provides an aerial view of the Cummings Road landfill. It's that more barren area as compared to the surrounding tree lines. And of course, the landfill is situated between its Cummings Road and Pigeon Point Road. The access road is the Cummings Road area. The total parcel of the landfill is about 101 acres, whereas the permitted landfill itself is 33 acres. In 2017, HWMA purchased 413 acres, which was 7 undeveloped forest parcels that surround the landfill. With the exception of these 2 parcels that are illustrated in the light blue, the timber properties are managed through a non-industrial timber management plan, or NTMP. The rights to the timber harvesting within the blue area were conveyed originally to Palco and then to the Humboldt Redwood Company. And the rights to harvest the timber on those parcels will terminate in 2027, and then HWMA will assume the timber ownership of those. And the remainder of the parcels are all managed under an NTMP that HWMA holds. The areas specifically that we're going to be talking about as far as the MTMP, these were all established underneath the California Forestry Practices Act in 1989, which promoted long-term management and planning on forest ownerships of properties less than 2,500 acres. In exchange for landowners managing their forest through an uneven management and long-term sustained yield, the NTMPs allow owners to log selectively within specified limits. The NTMP that is associated with the authority's forest properties was approved in June 20th of 2000. The property has been managed and selectively harvested on 12 occasions over the past 24 years, the most recent one being in 2018. HWMA has secured the services of Jim Abel Forestry Consultants as the registered professional forester of record, and they ensure that we are in compliance with our NTMP, and they maintain a continuity of property maintenance and management practices. Mr. Abel himself has been affiliated with this particular parcel since 1979, and he could speak pretty closely to it. And of course, the previous owners of this property, like the former landfill, was Eureka Garbage Company, and then NorCal Waste Solutions, and Recology is who we purchased it from. We were able to do a selective harvest in 2018 for about 200,000 board feet, and it netted approximately $187,000 of revenue for the authority. And in consultation with Jim Abel earlier this year, there is an area which is needing thinning, and we have some anticipated favorably projected redwood log prices. And so we are asking the board to consider authorizing us moving forward with another selective harvest activity. We're proposing that the harvesting will be performed in the areas of zone 1 and 2. And you'll note that these yellow areas are smaller than the actual zone itself. And I'm going to have Jim or David speak to that. But we are looking at log prices this season conservatively estimated at about $900 a million board feet. It's on the higher end of sort of what the average has been. We were able to secure really competitive pricing last time at about $1,200 dollars a million board foot. So with this, I'm going to introduce Jim Abel. I'm hoping he's available to go, or Dave. Just turn off your mute button. And there you are. Jim, will you be doing this?
Before you move ahead,
yes.
Could you clarify that back that you said $900 a million board feet? Isn't that $900 1,000 board feet?
900.
Yes, thank you. I just saw the M.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I suspect that's a pretty common error.
It can be. It can be.
So
it wouldn't be a good idea for someone to sell a property for.
Yeah, no.
I know people that have gotten rich on that kind of a deal.
So Jim, you're on mute. So if you go down to the lower part of your screen, if you can see that. Tyler, can you unmute him as well?
Okay, I got it unmuted.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Jim Abel, and I am president of Abel Forestry Consultants, and we're proposing to you all a harvest of about 310,000 board feet, plus or minus, in this summer. And we would propose that we would coordinate and handle the bid solicitations, the logging and trucking contractor selection, review, and concurrence with the executive director. We'll mark the trees, select the area to be harvested. We have broken the property years ago up into what we call manageable units. We try to keep track of each one of them because if you try to keep track of all of them all at once, you'd just be lost. But so we examine each one of these units periodically, and units 1 and 2 appear to be pretty good candidates for doing some selective logging. Unit 1, we picked an area there that David and I that could use a selective thinning. We do a kind of a thinning that we call a functional thinning, which is basically based less on spacing, but more on trying to leave the best phenotypes in the stand, and that helps us maintain the growth on these stands, even though we select them, we log them. Unit 2 is 100 acres in size, and we think we'll get about 150,000 feet off of it. And unit 1, we think we'll get 175,000 feet off of that one. The timelines and progression steps for this project, these projects, generally 300,000 feet is not a very large harvest, and we have a number of clients that like to log selectively, don't want to cut a lot of timber, but they do want to improve their forests, and they're small. So what we do is bundle these clients together, and that way they can present a much larger bid package to the sawmills, also to the operators who like to have a lot more timber to log, and so we get the best out of. We put these timber sales up for sale. We put the timber up for sale. We get bids from the sawmills. We take each individual property and analyze the bid that we got for that property, and we'll select the different mills, and at the same time we will also review the potential logging contractors. Again, sometimes it's hard to find logging contractors these days because of the cyclical part of the business. of their business. We want to get contractors that are experienced with our kind of demands in terms of how we want the properties logged, and we want them to be responsible operators. And so we will make a selection on that. That, of course, this will all be subject to review by the executive director of the Humboldt Waste Management. We send in a notice of operations. Actually, we will do that prior to the Department of Forestry, and what it basically alerts the Department of Forestry that we have, we are going to do our harvesting. We have to submit a spotted owl study, which we do every year, to identify the owls that have been present over in Freshwater Creek for the last 27 years. And we are ready to go in. Once we've done that, we've got the endangered species taken care of. In May, we will have our bids, and we provide the mills with a purchase agreement, which details the price, the volume, the logs. Once this, we will also at the same time get the timber operators. You'll have a contract. There'll be a contract. We have Nancy Diamond helped provide us with some contracts for 2 years too. Yes.
Yep. Jim, not to interrupt you. I think your reputation precedes you. I've known you for 40 plus years. And I think as far as environmental stewardship and everything else, I think you're second to none. I'd like to just, unless you want to keep going, I'd like to recommend that we hire you, have you do the thing lock, stock, and barrel, and put it out there and get the best price possible. I hope you get those prices. The log decks are pretty full for this time of year, but I don't think we can do any better. And you've got the history with the project, and I think your environmental stewardship will add to the value of the land and the further harvest later on. So I would just recommend staff's recommendation, because you're the real deal, Jim, and nobody complains. I've never heard anybody complain about him. So we've got but anyway, I recommend that we hire Jim Abels to handle the Cummings Road landfill and surrounding timberlands, timber operation plans.
And if I can do that, I would second that.
You can.
I think all I'd be looking for is to provide any other answers. I will let, in particular for Leslie and Elaine, because you guys are hearing this for the first time. When we went through this process, and it was really a pleasure working with Jim and Nancy and myself, and working through the contracts and bringing transparency, that we need as a public agency, sort of into this realm. And I think we've got a pretty good system that was set up, and Jim's model of being able to combine the timber off of these smaller operators and then leverage a really competitive price for all of us has really been to the best interest of these smaller held timberlands. So I don't know if you have any other questions, but I will tell you that it was seamless. Jim is very quick, as is his staff, to reach out if they've had any issues or concerns. And so I would just say that our prior experience was really a good experience, and I really enjoy working with Jim quite a bit.
Thank you.
And I would open that up to any members of the board that have questions for Jim. Seeing none, do we have any questions from the public?
We do need a second on the motion.
Oh, we got that. Yeah.
Frank seconded it.
Oh, he did. Okay, thank you.
And I see no hands up, Frank. So.
Okay. Then I guess we have a motion with a second. Would we take a voice vote?
Pereira,
Aye.
Castellano,
Aye.
Hogan,
Aye.
Bone,
You bet.
Wilson.
Yes. That motion passes, unanimous.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe I lost my one piece of paper here, but I believe we're on item 9. Is that executive report or is that
That's going to be board member report.
board member reports? Any board members have reports? I don't know if you go through a roll call on this or.
I can if you would like. It's worked in the past. Pereira,
No report, thank you.
Castellano,
I have a couple of quick things to report. Let's see. I've been hearing from a lot of quite a few citizens concerns around trash, and so I have kind of in and around Eureka. So it's going to be coming up on the agenda in February. I'm not sure if it's going to be the first meeting or the second meeting, but I just thought since it, kind of overlaps with some of our mission here, I would bring it up. Also in February, the city of Eureka is going to be having its strategic visioning session, and that will be every Friday at 1 p.m. in February. So if anyone has anything that you want to bring to the table, there will be public comment at the beginning of that session. I believe on every Friday, there'll be public comment taken. And then also just in terms of CRV, I've been continuing to engage with citizens about that. The grocers in particular have been reaching out. I also reached out to the League of California Cities, and I'm in conversation with one of their policy members to talk with them next week about CRV, just to kind of keep it on the table, keep trying to move forward with that. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hogan,
I don't have a report, but I do have a question about future agenda items and specifically wanting to address SB 1383 about organic waste that we're going to have to start planning for. And I'm wondering if we can have a discussion as a board in one of our public meetings about how to do that. I know when we had brought it up a few months ago, Leslie had kind of brought up a point that really resonates with me, that we need sort of like more of a workshop or a brainstorming session where we can really figure out as a community how to move forward. And so I was wanting to start planning for how we're gonna tackle SB 1383. So I'm wondering how to get that on the agenda or how to move forward as a board with that.
I'll be addressing this briefly in my ED report as well.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Bone,
Yeah, I've got a 7 o'clock in Fortuna I'm really late for. So, but I really think, and I'm sure it's going to be hit on the ED report, but I really think CRV should be on the agenda every meeting till I was down to 7 phone calls today on CRV. So I think it should be on every agenda, where and what have we heard, because much like Leslie and stuff like that, I've got the Grocers Association has created a little group and everything else, and they are paying approximately $36,000 to $40,000 a year not to take it, and most of them are putting it into a private account for themselves and holding it before they turn it over to Cal Recycle. So, and
I also have a report on this one for you.
I'm sure we do, but
Yeah.
I would like to see it on the agenda. I don't think I think it's much more important that, that they come at the end of the meeting. I think it should be on every until the problem or issue is solved. And I'm really send it to me because I'm not going to be around here for the ED report. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you.
and I'm sorry, Wilson. There is one more board member.
Yes, that was part of my question on the was for the CRV thing, where one, I was looking for a date when the stores become affected by they have to start paying the $3,000 a month or whatever it is if they don't comply with the rules to buy back the bottles individually. Because I've had other council members come and ask me about that in council meetings, and I do agree with Director Bone that we have it. We just keep this on the front burner on the CRV thing because it's affecting our small business people, and our other citizens are all wound up. And I like what Zero Waste said. We have to change our thinking, but in the meantime, there's I know people that are regularly driving to Crescent City to try to sell these. So that's all I had to report on it. And I also reiterate Mr. Bone's request to have this as a front burner item.
Okay. So if you're ready for the ED report, I can go ahead and walk you guys through a number of things.
Yes.
Okay. So first I want to let you guys know that at the end of November, Cal OSHA had their board met and requires all employers to prepare a written COVID program plan, which was in late November, and it incorporated the details, provisions, practices, and policies that HWMA certainly has developed since last March into a state consistent plan to protect our employees and customers from COVID transmission. So that has been completed, and we've got that available for all of our employees and anybody who requests a copy of that. The Solid Waste Local Task Force met in early December in order to receive an update on CRV, treated wood waste, as well as SB 1383. There was a presentation that was provided by Cal Recycle, and the representatives of the local grocers working group participated as well, because we talked about some CRV issues that I'll address shortly. So with respect to SB 1383, and this is something that Linda Wise and I have been talking about quite a bit, it is a really expansive piece of legislation that the jurisdictions are required to comply with by January of 2022. That's not HWMA. It is actually the jurisdictions. It's going to entail that each of the jurisdictions develop the necessary ordinances for your jurisdiction, require amendments to the franchise contracts, program development, such as the pickup of certain materials like green waste, organic waste, as well as education and enforcement provisions. The presentation that we heard made it very clear these aren't services that can be outsourced to other entities or through contracts. It's something that the jurisdictions need to be working towards. So part of trying to get the local task force staff folks to realize is we need to be having those collective conversations at the staff level so that there could be those policy discussions at the respective council levels. And myself and Linda have been addressing this a number of times. I put together a presentation 2 years ago for the local task force members, and I'm going to be bringing an item forward to you guys as part of our next meeting, I believe. And I'm anticipating that I'll work with Linda on getting it, because it's a pretty hefty component. And it's not just the jurisdictions, it's going to be involving grocery stores and other food preparation locations and the whole food recovery component. And that's not HWMA's, sort of bailiwick, if you will. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts, as well as the need. And this is part of what Tyler was getting at around, we foresee that there's going to be a need for investment of infrastructure to handle things like organics. So SB 1383 is really big, and we need to have everybody engaged at the staff level, at the policy level, at our board. So, because it's going to affect each of the jurisdictions individually. So the more we can figure out where there could be some coordination, the better. It's just been really hard to get some form of a conversation because it really has to be driven more by the jurisdiction. I'm going to try to prod that for you guys, and hopefully be able to take it back to your respective councils and say what's happening with this. We did coordinate with the Humboldt County Division of Environmental Health for the issuance of a press release informing the public of the state's changes to treated wood waste and the fact that it now has to be handled as hazardous waste effective January 1st. As a result of that, some input that we participated in addition to a number of other transfer stations and waste authorities and waste haulers and waste operators, landfills and transfer stations have been pretty successful in getting DTSC to reconsider the need to extend some form of variance to accept treated wood waste at transfer stations for disposal at landfills. They may allow a return to people being able to bring their material to us instead of having it handled as hazardous waste. Tentatively, they are anticipating that transfer stations and landfills could apply for a variance beginning mid-February, and they hope to issue variances beginning sometime in March of 2021. So this is kind of like a door is shutting. Well, maybe we'll open it. We're not really sure. So it's a little uncertainty. It makes it a real challenge for, how we're communicating with the public. What we are doing our best when loads are coming in, they receive a load check. If there is treated wood waste, then we are required by state law to return that material to the customer. Fortunately, the customer is able to come over oftentimes to our hazardous waste facility and have it disposed of there if it's meeting the size restrictions as well as the weight. Size restrictions being limitations because it has to fit in a container that we have to do this. We have performed our regular free Christmas tree disposal for all of our customers. We prepared a joint press release with Humboldt Sanitation and Recology and HWMA in order to identify all the different locations where people could drop off their Christmas trees or arrange for curbside pickup in certain jurisdictions. So with respect to CRV, I will tell you that while it may not be an agenda item on our board, in large part, it's because there's no action to be taken. But that has not in any way, shape, or form reduced the amount of time that I have been spending on the CRV matter. So first and foremost, there's no response to date from any of our legislative letters seeking emergency action to enable local recycling centers the latitude necessary to accept CRV material by appointment. I, as well as Linda, have been participating with the local grocers working CRV group, and we meet on a weekly basis, and we are collectively working on solutions. They did receive the letter demanding that they either redeem CRV or pay the $100 a day fine. As Rex noted, some of them are setting up accounts. Not all of them, though. So it's, they're working together as a group, but they're all trying to weigh their own level of risk that they want to take on that. So they have developed now a similar letter to the one that was circulated to our legislative representatives that was prepared by HWMA, and they are also seeking the emergency action from representatives and Cal Recycle, and they are making requests of each city to consider signing on with a similar letter. The Humboldt County Board of Supervisors approved a letter at their meeting on Tuesday. I do not have a copy of the final letter yet. I'm hoping I'll get one from Rex. HWMA, as well as the local grocers group, as I've informed the board, there's a statewide commission on recycling and marketing, which has been meeting for a couple of months now. And they had the Cal EPA director, Jaron Blumenthal, as well as the new Cal Recycle director present to respond to questions. So through the public question form, we all started submitting tons of questions about the CRV matter, which is affecting Humboldt County, to the point where they said, okay, Humboldt County, we've heard from you. We don't want to hear anymore. They have agreed, and they directed Commissioner Jeff Dunleavy, who addressed this board a couple of months ago, to prepare a letter. And I just want to, I can't underscore, he's been a really, really strong advocate for us. He gets the problems that we've been faced with. So he sent me a copy of the letter. We've made some additional edits, and the commission is scheduled to consider the letter for submittal to the governor and Secretary Blumenfeld and Cal Recycle at their January 20th meeting. And so that's just in another week. Hambro spoke to you all in November, and it indicated that if they could find a site, they would be setting up shop. I spoke to them again in December to ask what the status was, and they have decided again not to proceed with establishing a Humboldt site because the numbers simply don't pencil out. I also spoke with an interested individual just before Christmas. He was interested in opening up a recycling center in the Fortuna area. So I provided him the same information that I had provided to other individuals or entities that were looking at establishing a CRV buyback, and gave him all the links and contact information for Cal Recycle's certification unit. And I have not heard anything more from him since mid-December. It could simply be that it's a pretty voluminous process to go through all the requirements that you have to go through to become a recycling center. We did also recently learn that Cal Recycle has identified approximately 25 in-store redemption locations in Humboldt County on their website. And it ranges everything from some some gas stations and liquor stores, Winco, and a number of other places that have all signed the affidavit that went back to Cal Recycle saying that they will accept CRV containers for redemption at those sites. A member of the grocers group undertook some surveys and brought in some CRV material to those specific locations to redeem them, and found that the employees and the managers were unaware that they were supposed to take the CRV material. A couple of sites said that they're not prepared and they don't expect to be prepared for some period of time. And one site just asked him to please leave and not come back. So functionally at this juncture, there is still no CRV redemption, despite Cal Recycle listing 25 locations in Humboldt County. This information is going to be forwarded to Assemblymember Woods. He and his staff have been very, very vigilant in their continued monitoring and advocacy for Humboldt County. But that's where we are with some of the ongoing CRV. So this has, been just over the course of the last month and a half. As I had indicated to board members almost 2 weeks ago, we had several employees who tested positive for COVID, which has resulted in pretty extensive investigation and investigations, as well as additional employee testing and some personnel who are remaining in isolation until they are cleared to work by the Humboldt County public health officials. And to date, we have not had to modify our hours or our services, although I will tell you our staffing is very lean. And there was one day where we only had our director of operations who was able to operate the heavy equipment. So we remain lean, and everybody has been doing everything we can to ensure continued operations with no interruptions to our customers. I do want to note that these cases were confined to one group. Board members will recall we've done everything we can in order to, kind of maintain these very small working groups, and that has been successful. We moved away from the pods to working groups, and so fortunately that working group model was still very effective at keeping any viral transmission from moving outside of the group. And for these particular employees, none of them are in customer-facing positions. So there's a great assurance around that. Employee notifications were provided both verbally and in writing, and many of our regular employees not associated with that particular group have taken COVID tests and with negative results, throughout the organization, which has been very reassuring through that. A couple of notes in terms of personnel retirements. There have been a number of personnel changes, and it's not just here with HWMA. We have experienced the retirement of some of our key regulators. So there's like this departure of sort of the institutional knowledge, if you will. So the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board representative that we've worked with and has been part of HWMA's landfill for better than 25 years, she retired. We've also had our local air district representative retire, and so we're going to be working with some new regulatory personnel there, as well as the county LEA has had some pretty ongoing shifts in personnel as well. Member agency staff retirement is also changed from the cities of Arcata, Blue Lake, and Eureka. So as we're talking about how we move forward with SB 1383, this has, 1383. This has a pretty dramatic impact in terms of some of those working relationships and again, some of that institutional knowledge. We've also been notified that in the world of our contractors, Ron Borges, who has been our point of contact with Bettendorf Trucking, he retired on January 1st. So Michael McLaughlin is now stepping in for him, and he's coming up to speed. Wes and Teresa Green have resumed operations of Mad River Hardwoods for green waste processing. Their son had been operating that, but they're stepping back in now. The board's recruitment subcommittee did meet several times in November and December, which resulted in the release of the executive director's recruitment brochure, my position, as well as the position listings have gone live as of Monday. So the job announcement is available on HWMA's website as well as at Coffin Associates. The deadline to file for that position is February 12th. So I know I sent all the board members and your city managers and other folks that I have worked with regularly over the years, just a short synopsis with the attachment, and are trying to do our part in broadcasting the opportunity for folks. And that concludes my ED report. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Jill?
So with that, I do have a question. We're always happy to put a standing item onto the agenda. Is it just to be an update? I mean, I typically don't have a standing item for an unknown action. I don't necessarily want to put things on there, but we can certainly have this one, but I've always just had the CRV component folded into the ED report.
I think that's a good place to start. Is that one is that we have an update like you did tonight. Mm-hmm. The ongoing progress of the, as people bring this up from the other agencies or jurisdictions, questions that that can be pursued. And I realize it's not a simple matter. It's one that requires a lot from the state to want to get behind, and I'm hesitant to believe that they really want to make this work for us. It doesn't appear that way. When they want something to work, you see a lot more action where they're not responding to our letters. I don't have an answer. I'm frustrated. It's
pretty disheartening, to say the least. And in the course of the meetings with the local grocers group, they've been really absolutely, wonderful, because obviously the closure of all of the recycling centers has landed squarely on their, lap. And I think after they were very welcoming, but after they had their first meeting with Cal Recycle, the level of frustration, by everybody, and it was kind of like, oh, now we understand what you've been experiencing. It's like, yeah, and I'm sorry, all we need are appointments. That's all we're asking for. And, there's some other things that would make the ability to, like, being able to accept greater levels of materials, to pre-2014. Those things would be great. But if we could just do appointments, we could make this work. And, we're going to have to continue subsidizing until the market rebounds. And so there will be a policy question for this board in terms of how long or how far is the board comfortable subsidizing the operations to provide this money back, because essentially we're, collecting, a dime and then giving somebody back a nickel. I mean, is that, but that's a bigger conversation that the board could be, having. But we can't even have that conversation until Cal Recycle would allow appointments or something like this. So the grocers group has been really, really wonderful. It's been a real pleasure to work with them. Everybody's trying to figure out, different, strategies to figure out how to make something work. And I think in the past, they probably would have said, no, we're not interested in vending machines. We do have a couple of those grocers who are like, yeah, we could totally see, how creating additional locations will be really crucial to alleviating the stress on the 4 recycling centers that are there. So, it's opening up some communications that we weren't having before. And I think collectively, with the frustrations with Cal Recycle, it's forcing everybody to kind of coordinate even better. We don't have answers, but we're coordinating better.
How much did we subsidize? Did HWA have to subsidize this?
Well, we've subsidized the complete operations of the Eureka Recycling Center to the tune of $673,000 a year. Tyler might recall, I had it at one time. It's like $9 a ton of material gets directed over there. With our decision to waive the collection fee for electronic waste and some of the other, appliance recycling, because people could drop that off free. Exactly how much goes to CRV and how much is going in some of the other areas. We're going to have to continue teasing some of that out. The facility has always been operated with CRV and all the other activities. We are now operating the facility with electronic waste, appliances, and source separated. So we're able to see what the costs are without CRV. So I think we'll be able to start teasing out some of that information better than we could have in the past. So, and everything is predicated on what the value of the commodity material is. So cardboard goes up and down, the metal goes up and down. So it's a constantly fluctuating thing. So it's not a really easy answer to give to you, Frank.
I understand that. All right. Well, I appreciate it that you bring it in our in your ED report. So was somebody else wanting to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering, and I'm supportive of some sort of just update being on the agenda. I think it may be helpful to citizens just to know that it's there. We're still being mindful of it. But I think the question I have is, this January 20th meeting where the letter is going to be presented to the governor, is there a specific ask or kind of hope that comes out of that? Is there a hope that the governor is going to provide some kind of direction to Cal Recycles or?
Yeah, so this letter is actually being generated by a member of the statewide recycling committee. The committee charged him with putting together the letter. It's going to be presented for their consideration and approval, and it will go to the governor and to the secretary of Cal EPA, because they're the ones who provide the oversight to Cal Recycle. And the ask is looking for emergency legislation. So it's very consistent with what we've been asking for. It does take on a broader statewide perspective so that it's not just Humboldt dominated, but that's part of what Jeff is trying to work on, so that There has been some legislation which has been introduced to the legislature. It will take some time to get through that process. Even if it makes it through the process, going through the rulemaking and everything else, the earliest, the most optimistic time we would see a change is 2 years out. If the governor takes emergency action, that could go into effect almost immediately. We would still need, in that case, to go through the certification process, which is 90 days, blah, 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 blah. But that's a lot faster than having to wait until September of 2022 at the earliest. I don't know if that helps you. Okay, excellent. Any other questions?
All right, seeing none, I guess that moves us down to adjournment. Yeah,
It does.
it does. Do we have to make a motion for that, or do we?
No.
No, we don't. Okay. Well, then
You as the chair can adjourn us.
I adjourn us as chair. I adjourn us. And thank you all for coming tonight. And we'll see you in.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
next
Have a
month.
good evening.
Good night.